It is time.
Hello there.
Larian Studios? Good. Baldur's Gate 3 is more than a video game. It's the most definitive and crystal clear middle finger to every studio nowadays, releasing their games in a broken state, filled to the brim with microtransactions.
What's your question?
My question is, what the hell?
Battle Pass.
No, that's Battle Pass. Battle Pass.
You should never pre-order video games. But some studios have released so much perfection until this point. They may hold the exception, and Larian Studios is one of them. Coming out of Ghent in Belgium, I wouldn't say that I technically should own them, but you know. Any company that has the balls to have people try out their game 2 years prior to release gets a thumbs up and a BJ in my book. If you're just as a massive PG fan as I am, you're gonna love this game. Character creation, overall gameplay, companions, story, all timestamps in the description. Let's go. BG is a RPG. So as you can imagine, character creation is incredibly important. You have a plethora of races to choose from, which I will not all name because you can read yourself, I hope. If you can't read, you're gonna have a bad time with this game. Okay. Role-playing wise, it's great because things like in-game dialogue and choices are gonna depend on the race you are and the class you've chosen. Gameplay wise, it's even better because you can just stick to one class the entire game and slowly but surely pick some new abilities here and there, or make it as advanced as you please by multi-classing into different classes at once. The latter is one of the few ways to absolutely ruin your playthrough though if you have no clue what you're doing. But you can just stick to one class for the entire game and it will work fine. So especially if you have no clue what you're doing, stick to something simple like a ranger or a fighter, and then for a second or third playthrough multi-class into, say, a paladin with some cleric abilities. If you find these type of games overwhelming, or this is the first time you play any of these type of games, trust me when I say either pick a paladin or a warlock, because they're 1. Very fun to play, and 2, overpowered as fuck. I'm a huge sucker for an in-depth character creation, and this may honestly be the best one I've ever seen. Or at the very least, aesthetics-wise, it's one of the best. With all of the races to choose from and the different hairstyles, to piercings, to backgrounds, to highlights, to altering eye colors, it's just mind-blowing. I put emphasis on aesthetics for a reason, as you shouldn't expect to be able to write your own entire backstory and have multiple layers to where you were raised, like some other RPGs like, for example, Deadfire or Wrath of the Righteous do. But nonetheless, this is very impressive. Obviously, Larian created games like Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. And whenever you boot up Divinity Original Sin 3, Baldur's Gate 3, similarities are noticeable from the very start. They've got the narrator explaining everything that is going on, that thankfully, this time at least, is voiced by Amelia Tyler, who has the most perfect ASMR voice you can imagine.
Chill runs up your spine. You feel like you're being watched.
Which is a huge improvement compared to the PTSD we've all gotten from Divinity Original Sin 2.
She kisses your neck, your chest, twirls her tongue around your nipples.
What the fuck?
The layout and the look of items are essentially the same. Elements play a huge role, and a lot of animations are also exactly the same. But hey, as long as the loot spam isn't as bad as in Divinity Original Sin 2, I don't care. Oh my god, what the fuck? Whereas DOS 2 used its own rule set, BG3 is based on D&D 5th edition, meaning that essentially everything you do is based on dice rolls. Dialogue skill checks are based on dice rolls. Critical hits are based on dice rolls. How long you last in bed is based on dice rolls. Your entire life will depend on dice rolls. Technically. It's not as abundant as in most other D&D games where you are constantly bombarded with whatever is going on with things like AC and will saves and spell saves. But it's still there, just hidden behind everything that is going on. Every attack, for example, will have your character roll a d20 dice to see if he's either gonna hit or not. And afterwards a damage roll to see how much the damage will be. It's now just displayed as percentages and numbers in advance. Sure, some people would have preferred if they kept more to the original Baldur's Gate games, and maybe even on top of that remove things like percentages and turn the entire game into an actual pixelated mathematics test like the original two games, instead of this modernized version we got now. But honestly, if you ask me, if this type of gameplay that is so much more accessible to the mainstream type of gamer ensures that more people will try out these type of games, who cares, right? It works, it's less of a headache to understand, it's a lot more accessible to newer players. This works fine. After finally hitting something successfully, you can get as creative as you want. Hit enemies into pits, killing them instantly, combine weather elements, or smack them on the head with a piece of meat. Something that I was incredibly impressed by is that the AI will apply these exact same tactics when they are fighting you. Everything goes, which is great. Outside of combat, you'll often encounter areas that will kill you due to, say, fall damage, but after using a spell or a potion that negates this, you are now free to explore said area. You'll often find hidden areas and puzzles only unlockable by digging around or trying out every item in the vicinity. You can play catch with a dog. In other words, you will get rewarded for trying out random and creative things, which is amazing. Animations are snappy and quick, and unlike certain other CRPGs, almost none of the fights feel like a chore to get through. Some of them drag on longer than needed, especially in Chapter 3. But with so many abilities and things in the environment at your disposal, you have a lot of options to keep the gameplay fresh. Also keep in mind that with 12 different classes to choose from, you essentially have endless possibilities to try out different builds and combine different things. So the replayability here is insane. Huge bonus points for the variety of enemies to fight. None of them are copy and paste, and every chapter introduces a plethora of new enemy types. Especially in the third act, there are a lot of boss fights that require you to utilize the environment, which was a welcome change of pace. As with most of these types of games, crowd control is king. So whenever you've unlocked a few items that bundle people together and throw a bomb or spell their way, you can easily shave a couple of minutes from every fight. Last but not least, it's great that the amount of exploration, puzzles, dialogue and combat are pretty well balanced, ensuring that you're not constantly in tedious fights. It does suck that your party is so incredibly slow and that there is no way to make them head somewhere but just using the map. There are fast travel points, sure, but we shouldn't have to rely on those. With all of that being said though, if you did not like the combat in games like XCOM, DOS 2, Wasteland, there's nothing for you here, because the only way to play the game is in turn-based combat. You'll often hear me say in my videos that I love it when it feels like a game has been made by actual gamers, instead of programmers who've just been given a task by their office manager to create something that they don't even care about. And BG3 feels like one of those type of games. Every small little thing that you really want in an RPG is here. Being able to see different quests at once on the map, trading with NPCs while the conversation is going on in the background, hiding helmets during dialogue or just in general, the look and background of the camp changing as it depends on the location you are in, being able to respec every character from the start, and the list goes on. Everything feels like it has been placed and is designed in a way to be convenient to you. It's not all perfect though. For starters, you cannot change your appearance, which is just really weird considering all of the other stuff I just mentioned that they have thought of. This is like the #1 thing that people want to do. It is supposedly being added soon though, but nonetheless, to not have this from the start, it's weird. I had pretty frequent crashes, at least one during every few hours or so. Things like edge panning is constantly not working unless you touch your keyboard again, which removes like the entire point of having edge panning. And the oh so amazing hide your hat mechanic I just mentioned doesn't even work 9 out of 10 times. But other than that, there were no game-breaking bugs except for one companion quest that I couldn't finish because the NPC I had to talk to was just nowhere to be found.
You've proven your wits.
A wise man once said, "A RPG is only as good as its companions." It was me. I said that. You'll meet a lot of companions throughout your playthroughs, and in classic RPG fashion, all of them have a plethora of personal problems, mental issues, and deep desires and secrets going on in their lives. Which is cool, but also a little bit overwhelming. In a game that should be focused on you, role-playing as a completely made-up character and trying to make said character fit in with the world and its problems it's facing, the game sure as shit focuses a lot on your companions. So much so that you can essentially just play the entire game as one of your companions instead of creating a character yourself. That stuff worked pretty well in DOS 2. Here it's a bit iffier. More so because even a noob like me knows that D&D is completely focused on you creating your own character and making a headcanon for that character and making that character fit into the world. You create a connection with that character. So me having to constantly listen to my companions who share their mental issues, or the fact that they have a demon stuck inside their head, or the fact that they have a disease that they can barely contain within the first like 15 minutes of meeting them, is just a little bit too much. It has its ups and downs though. For example, whenever some drama goes down between characters, the other companions will actually question them about this or respond to the situation.
Your magician seems dour tonight. Must not relish the idea of sprouting tentacles.
So this group of people that you travel with does really feel like they have a connection with each other. And I know it's a bit cheesy, but yeah, they feel alive. It's just that between the fanatical religion worship and the devil pacts, it's a lot to unpack. At first, because it doesn't take away that they're all amazing characters. Also, the way their quests all unfold throughout the game is magnificent, and I highly recommend you to complete all of them, as it leads to some of the best cutscenes of the entire game, and also some of the best voice acting I've seen in years.
That's my reward for everything I suffered. That's why I survived 10 years of torment.
Do keep in mind that sneak romances are a thing in this game. Characters whom you've had a bit of small talk with will out of nowhere declare love to you, even though you've been trying to romance a completely different character or you were just trying to be nice to them. Now then, last but not least, this is not necessarily a companion issue, but more so an overall gameplay issue, but it applies to the companions. Swapping them out is annoying as shit. Instead of leaving camp and just being able to pick who you want to join you and have all of your items in like one big group inventory, you need to head to your current party members with that really slow walking speed I mentioned before. Tell them to wait at camp, after which they every time ask you if you're sure, like yeah, I'm sure, that's why I pressed the option for you to leave my party. Then head over to the new party member with the same slow walking speed, ask them, hey, join me. It just takes up a lot of unnecessary time, and it would have been so much easier to have like one big group manager in which we could choose who we want to head out with. Yeah. Just takes up a lot of unnecessary time. Nonetheless, all in all, I like this. It's a bit overwhelming at first, but you do create a connection with these characters. And I know this is completely like personal and subjective. I didn't dislike any of them. There are plenty of other games that have a lot of annoying companions, but this game doesn't. They're very active, they're very present, they're very in your face about everything that's happening, but they're likable and the voice acting is sick. Do with that information what you will.
I'd give you a gold star, but I'm fresh out.
Let me ask you a question. How often has it happened that you're playing a RPG and whenever the like 400th character you're speaking to is rambling about some shit that you just do not care about, and you ask the same repetitive dialogue like, tell me about yourself, heard any rumors floating about, do you have any jobs for me? You just completely zone out because you realize that you're not having fun, but you're just clicking through dialogue options as you want to reach the next part in the game. That doesn't happen here. There just isn't any filler up dialogue. All of it matters in at least one way or another. The writing is top notch.
Second worm gets the cheese and all.
Second mouse gets the cheese, no?
Nobody's getting any damn cheese.
The characters are all interesting, and except for some funky facial animations from your main character, there's no weird crap happening that pulls me out of the immersion. Which brings me to the final part of the video, which is the story. Spoiler free, don't worry, just a small setup about what it's about. If I liked it, didn't. The game sends you on a wild goose chase looking for a cure for the so-called tadpole that was placed behind your eye. Since you've acquired this thing though, you can now read thoughts of every other person who has one of these things. This places your characters in a dilemma. Use said tadpoles for their magical powers at risk of being turned into full-on mind flayers, or do everything in your power to avoid that but then miss out on the powers. Following along? Cool, because this was the setup for Act 1. Act 2, which is very hard to get into without spoiling anything, but this act is still at least following along with the idea of having your #1 priority being to remove this tadpole, even though there's a lot of new characters and content being thrown your way, which kinda makes you forget about that whole ordeal. Cue Act 3, which does something that I personally just really hate, which is they introduce like the 3 most important characters of the entire game in the last couple of hours of the story. And as you can imagine, they're responsible for altering the endings, how everything goes down with your companions and your character, and it's just why. In fairness, it does provide plenty of "what the f*** moments, as there are plot twists and crazy encounters aplenty. Also, again, the writing is amazing, which goes for the main story and the side content. Trust me, there's a lot of side content. To summarize, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is already a must-play RPG, like not of the year, of all time. What they've accomplished here with all of the motion captured voice actors, the different outcomes for side quests and the ending of the main story, how it all ties together, how there are barely any glitches and bugs on release, especially for a game like this that's so incredibly big. It's mind-blowing. If you had to nitpick some issues, like yeah, the second and third act have some pacing issues and the performance in Act 3 is currently really bad. And last but not least, yeah sure, the game feels more like Divinity Original Sin 3 than a Baldur's Gate 3, but who cares? If you are in the mood for a game that you can replay like 3, 4, maybe even 5 times and have every playthrough be different than the other ones, you're gonna love this game. I loved it. For 60 bucks, it's more than worth your money. You can easily get 200 to 300 hours out of this game. Easily. And most importantly, all of those hours will be fun and different compared to the previous hours. Like, what more can you ask for? This is more than just a simple game. It's a tribute to what gaming used to be like before all of the big studios bought up the smaller teams and forced them to make types of games that they just didn't care about. No passion, no love. And I know that it's like the fucking circle jerk of gaming. Every game's busted nowadays. It's not that bad, let's face it, but it's nice to from time to time have a game like this one do so incredibly well, because it shows that yeah, all of that stupid shit people are saying, oh, gaming is dead, gaming isn't what it used to be, is bullshit. There are still plenty of games like BG3 being released that are just amazing. Go buy this game, you will not regret it. I didn't. Thank you for watching, and yeah, have fun.